Can you tell I'm an actor who's been on film sets before?
A little bit.
I'm just like yammering on, and then John's like 5 seconds. I'm like, oh,
yeah.
And pose.
It's kind of a skill that you notice when you're on sets. The people who can snap right into like, okay, it's go mode. It's go time. It's go time right now.
Go time.
And let's face it, you're always ready to go.
Thanks, bud. Except when I'm corpsing.
Yeah, well,
that's difficult.
You're allowed here. There we go.
Hi, Max. Are you a camouflaged printer cat?
Oh, is Morks?
Camouflaged printer cat. Can you see him? I don't know
No,
what
they
my
won't be
frame
able
is
to see
like,
them.
but
Your
oh,
framing is...
oh, Morks.
Okay. I can try zooming out a little bit for you.
Just to show the man, because he's right there. He's creeping.
All right, let's see.
And then you can see my messy frame. We've got a plastic Canadian Tire bag of kindling.
There he is.
Then we got a Max Man on the printer. Yay.
There we go. Well, the thing is, on a film set, Avatar of Cain, it's kind of very much a hurry up and wait scenario.
Yeah.
And if you, like, it can be literally hours of you standing around, which sounds great until you actually have to do it, and then it sucks.
Yeah. And what's happened a few times with me is I've played a number of like pregnant women on film sets, and so they'll strap you into the belly, and it's happened a few times where like I'm so like strapped and pinned in that I actually can't get out of my belly to pee without assistance. So when I was in the Home Alone movie, I did not make the final cut. Don't bother looking for me. I was waiting around for like 8 hours, just lying in my trailer, my quarter trailer, not a full trailer, Jesus. Like just on the bed, belly over me, just like this, kind of watching Netflix, like balancing my phone on my belly. And yeah, every so often I would have to pee, and I would just have to like do the walk of shame to the costume trailer and be like, hi, please help me. I can't get out of my costume. But then, yeah, suddenly you'll get a knock on the door and they're like, they're ready, get to set. And you're like, fuck.
Oh, shit.
Just run. Yeah, so you have to be careful with how many beverages you consume. Exactly.
I did not set the title of the stream.
Uh-oh.
So, I'm a bad man.
That's okay.
Sit in activity in terms of just having to hold and be ready. Yeah.
Sitting around and doing nothing sounds so fun, and then like you reach a certain point where you don't know what to do with yourself anymore.
I admire people who have the ability to sit and wait. I can do it. I don't like doing it.
I'm okay if I have like it's like with long walks as well. I can do like an hour and a half walk, no problem, as long as I have music. If I don't have music, it is pure torture. I don't know why I can't walk without music.
You're better off than I am. I need podcasts these days.
I went through a podcast walking phase, and now I've circled back around, but I'll probably come around again after.
When My Dad Wrote a Porno releases its next season?
Yes, of course. Well, that's what Scott and I listen to when we're driving back into the city.
Are you just like listening to the whole thing on a loop?
No.
So you're not like, oh, it's our 7th time through.
No, but now I want to restart it, because the beginning of it is like, it's something else, because it was before the dad became self-aware, you know? Like, it was before he realized what he had done. So there's a lot of like charm to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was an innocence.
Yeah. And now he knows exactly what he's doing. Right, Max?
Ellie Spot, the thing that kind of like makes me drop my jaw a little bit is the idea of a drop-in clinic where somebody is waiting, where a doctor is waiting to see people. Around here, the doctors don't wait.
No,
We
wait.
It is the patients.
We wait for years to get a family doctor. I'm on a list. I imagine in 3 years I'll have one.
You still don't have one, eh?
Well, I'm bad and didn't put my name on a list when everyone else did. So I actually finally went on a list when we moved. But plus side, it'll be someone in the area. So there's that.
I mean, I guess better than, oh, now my family doctor is somebody who I have to go all the way into town just to see them.
Exactly.
I mean, now that's where I'm at, because my family doctor was at my old place, and now I moved a bit away. I mean, it's like a 20-minute trip. It's not terrible.
I'm going to have to practice my French, though, because all the clinics out here seem very francophone.
I think you'll probably be okay, because I think a lot of people study medicine at McGill.
Oh, well, we'll see.
I think you'll be all right. I think a lot of them will speak English pretty well.
Okay.
Not that I'm saying you shouldn't practice your friends. But what we can do is we can practice making characters. That segue was awful.
Yes.
We can make some characters here. You're the last one to go.
The last one.
And perhaps that means that yours are the secrets that are the most valuable of all.
Oh, God.
In case that you haven't been here for clinic hours recently, if you're curious, you can follow along. The idea for this is that we're doing character creation, but we're not holding the players to anything. If they want to make changes, they can. In fact, they can make changes even a few sessions into the chronicle itself. We have a grace period. It's all useful for that. But then also, one thing that I will point out is that for today, specifically, despite the fact that the character creation for L5R really is a 20-question questionnaire, there will be questions that we may end up skipping. And that's just because some of these things are things we're just going to have to discuss together as a group. They'll be part of our session 0. And some of them are just, we haven't gone through the book to go through all the, intricacies, because we also only have 2 hours for the stream, and we've already spent a bunch talking about standing around doing nothing.
That's very apropos for a stream with me, though. Let's be honest. There's no surprise. Also, as usual, if it sounds like there's a lot of sibilance to my speech, please know I'm still getting used to my Invisalign. And to me, my voice sounds very strange. So.
I think you're all right. I don't think that's a huge deal. Now, I'll also remind you of one thing, which I did remind the other two when we started. Today is about you. It is not about you worrying about everyone else's character. You are welcome to make whatever choices you want moving forward. If it's the kind of thing that you're like, I honestly don't know what I would pick here, and it kind of depends on what other people have picked, that's totally fine, right? If it's just a question of like, oh, well, I could take medicine here, or I could take theology, and I don't know what everyone else has taken because I'll take what everyone else hasn't, that's fine. If it's legitimately that you have no preference. Otherwise, I'd prefer to see your character sheet as you would like to see it. If it turns out that we have a little too much overlap between characters, and that is a problem for either one of you, because oftentimes it isn't, then we will, by all means, we can make changes at that point. But today is about you.
Perfect.
And of course, chat, today is about you. The bot is not active because the computer that the bot would be on is actually not in my room at the moment. But you are always welcome to ask questions. We will capture them. We will throw them up on the screen if they are ones that you would like to have answered, whether it's about what we're doing here or even if it's just tangentially related to role-playing in general. Toss them in. We'll see what we can do about making you happy. Are we ready to go?
Yes, we are. Yes, we are.
So we're back. In the Legend of the Five Rings role-playing game, there is a game of 20 questions, as they call it. The game of 20 questions is the character creation throughout the whole thing. And it's in fact the only way to create characters. I guess you could kind of go through and just make the mechanical choices and then go back and find out what that means otherwise. But we're going to go through this all the way through.
Whee!
So our first question,
Yes.
possibly the one where we'll have the most contention, is what clan does your character belong to?
So I was reading everything over, and the one. Okay, you know what? First, a disclaimer for the chat. I am so very unfamiliar with this setting, or with this system, I should say, as is everybody else at the table. This is the first time that I've built a character, or at least in a really long time, where it's just been kind of piecemeal. Like, I'm literally going through the 20 questions and like reading the book and just gathering things that stand out to me. And I'm hoping eventually they all magically come together into some kind of character. For a number of the streams before this point, I've had a concept that's been quite clear in my mind. This one, not so much. And so, like, I'm really excited to have it become clear. And with that in mind, the clan that jumped out at me the most was Phoenix. So that's what I'm gonna say.
Clan of the Fried Shrimp.
Well, yeah.
Fried Shrimp. Then that's 3 for 3 in terms of Phoenix,
Yep.
which is an interesting way to go, I think. There's hot diggity. Kung Fu Fender seems pleased. Why is that hot diggity, Kung Fu Fenders? I mean, I like it. I think that's kind of rare. I think that oftentimes you'll get people who come in and say, well, I was really hoping to play this clan and this house and this whatever. And everybody sort of makes their choices and that's it. The three of you picked the same clan.
Yeah.
Which sort of opens up a bunch of opportunities. And I'm kind of into it. If you have picked Phoenix Clan, then that does mean specifically, there it is. That does mean specifically for you that you are going to get +1 void to your ring.
Okay.
And in terms of skill, you're going to get +1 theology, which we have determined at this point is really a representation of knowledge of the AI in our setting. So I don't know if we're going to rename it. We may, because theology seems like a weird thing to sort of put to that. But of course, in the rest of the book, it's going to be referred to as theology. So we don't necessarily want to hold on to that. So we don't necessarily want to get rid of that, because if we get rid of it, then it might be difficult for us to like cross-reference, like, oh, what am I supposed to roll? Theology? I don't have theology on my sheet.
Yeah, it might. Yeah, we'd have to be very clear if we were replacing terms. Right, Max? Arr!
Max is clear. I miss Max.
He misses you, I'm sure. Max, why don't you come here? Oh, I don't know if I'll be able to get him without making a huge mess. Come here, buddy.
Yeah, I wouldn't worry about that.
The lady's here.
Oh, Morks. We also have a status of 30. Everyone in the chat has kind of seen this before, but 30 is pretty kind of basic for status among the clans. There are a couple of clans where status is slightly higher, but otherwise 30 is pretty average. So then we move on to question 2, which is what family does your character belong to?
So again, the one that jumped out at me is Sheba.
The Sheba family.
Yes.
Do you have the book in front of you?
Let's see. I have a Google Doc and I have the book. Let me find.
Because if you want to read out what the Sheba family is, you can.
Let me
Otherwise,
see if I can find it easily. I should have put
on page 53.
Oh, thank you. The Shiba family descends from the kami Shiba and provides the phoenix with a champion, but it bent the knee to the Isawa family early in its history and has dutifully served it ever since. The Shiba focus on keeping the Phoenix clan safe and rely first and foremost on diplomacy before resorting to force. They are expected to be learned in scholarly ways as well as in the warrior arts, and they understand the Shugenja they serve better than they do most Bushi families.
Well, mechanically, this means that you increase either your earth or your water ring.
I choose water, please.
It also means that you get a +1 to your meditation and +1 to your tactics, and your starting wealth is 5 koku. We'll see what that actually means. But you are a member of the Shiba family. So in this way, you're all Phoenix, but you're also all of different families. Because we have the Kaito family, and I believe it was the Isawa family. So we got a couple of different representations there. Works for me. You've also got 40 glory to start with, which is kind of average in terms of glory. But we move on to your role in your school. This is where it kind of starts crystallizing, I think, for a character. Have you chosen a role in a school?
So I'm thinking Shiba Guardian School for my school. And then I think the role was Bushi.
Okay.
Down? Yeah.
Oh, let's keep that in there. So we're going to not plus water, +1 water. The sheet that I have, the fillable PDF that I have, is kind of janky because it is not official. So as Shiba swore to protect Isawa, so the Shiba Guardian School emphasizes the defense of and cooperation with the Isawa. Its members complement and protect priests, shrine keepers, and Shugenja. So we have shrine keepers, and I guess they need somebody to protect them, and I guess that's going to be you.
Yeah, the idea that I'm kind of thinking is that I protect first and foremost through diplomacy and peaceful negotiation, but secondarily through physical violence.
So sometimes
force.
you protect.
Shows of force, shall we say.
Sometimes you attack.
Sometimes I snack.
So you've got a +1 earth and +1 water to your rings. You've also can choose between 5 starting skills. Have you chosen those already?
Wait, was that one of the 20 questions? Because if so, I probably skipped it.
It is in part, it's still in part of question 3.
Okay, where are the skills? Oh, there, choose 5. I see them.
So your choices are courtesy, fitness, martial arts, melee, meditation, survival, tactics, and theology.
Okay.
You get to pick
choose
5.
I know, shit, that's a lot. It's almost easier to choose the ones you don't want.
In fact, maybe that's a way to do it.
Okay, I don't want tactics because I don't want to be like Gale. So let's axe.
You already actually have tactics. You have 1 in tactics already.
Bada bing, bada boom. So axe tactics.
So we'll axe sticks.
Axe sticks, the tactics. So I want to go more into unarmed martial arts than melee martial arts. So I'm kind of wondering if I should axe martial arts melee.
So here's okay. So that is absolutely something that you can totally do. I am going to point out that if you look for Shiba Guardian School, you can also see that to the left are the skills that are being taught as part of the school. And martial arts melee appears in 3 of the 5 ranks.
So maybe I should switch my concept to melee. It would be a lot easier to do this. I would be making life very hard for myself.
Well, what was appealing about melee for you? Or, sorry, about unarmed?
I am the weapon, so I don't need one.
Is it possible, and we are moving into we're moving in a little bit off the beaten path here, if you are going to be an artificial life form. Do you want to have built-in melee weapons?
Well, yeah, I thought it'd be really cool if I had like some part of me that I could remove as a weapon.
So that's still melee.
Okay, perfect. So in that case, no survival, because why would I need to survive?
What?
Fuck that. I am a disposable creature. Take out survival.
Because the way that I'm seeing it here is potentially the idea is that for most people they have to draw a weapon, right? You can quite literally swap your normal arm potentially out for what would essentially be a weapon.
Chainsaw.
Which would still follow the same rules as other weapons. You could still potentially be disarmed if it, somebody managed to find a way to rip the sword out of its socket. That would be the equivalent of ripping a sword out of a normal human's hands. But I see this as something that you can still do and still maintain melee while it's still being you are the weapon.
That's a really good idea.
All right.
Thank you, John.
So we got +1 courtesy.
Yeah, I think that tracks.
We have +1 fitness.
I think that works, yeah.
We have +1 martial arts.
Melee, yeah.
We have +1 meditation.
Mm-hmm.
And we have +1 theology.
Correct.
So, this is probably a good time for us, just before we continue on with question 3. You wanted to play an artificial life form. So what about that appeals to you?
So when we were playing Exalt Witch Academy, there was a lot of kind of our characters were raised with a very specific type of training and a specific type of schooling, so much so that it became ingrained in our heads, a certain way of thinking. So I wanted to kind of play with that, but rather than having it be something that was almost indoctrinated into you from an early age, it was literally programmed into me. Because I'm interested in exploring the differences in that.
Right.
Between someone who was taught, but also somebody who's advanced enough that eventually they are going to start to gain more critical thought. But at the beginning, their beliefs, their programming is very rigid.
The idea that as you progress in the Chronicle, that your programming may evolve, change.
Yeah, it seems like a big challenge, and I'm interested in trying it. We've played a bunch of games before, and this is something that is like scary in its newness, and therefore I'm tempted to try it.
I like the idea that like we played games before, but this is real.
We're not joking around anymore, boy. Yeah, like pretty much. Yeah.
So Kung Fu Fenris is asking, do Liz want to be unique? Like the Shiba might be a product line of samurai meant to protect Phoenix Corp.
So this is kind of a conversation that I think you and I were having, John, and what you suggested works really well for me.
And what was it that I said?
So one thing that I didn't want to be rare or hidden. Like I didn't want it to become a big plot point that like wherever Liz's character is, like no one can figure out that she's, an artificial life form. Like that's, I didn't want that to be, that feels very like scene stealery to me. So whatever I am, like I'm fine with being a more advanced version of it, but I don't want it to be rare. So John suggested a kind of tier system, which I think was really cool. And I'm sure you could articulate it better than me, John, if you remember it. Otherwise, I can pull up our Facebook conversation.
So the idea is that synthoids, or synths, as they're known, are manufactured artificial intelligences. They actually share some lab-grown organs with manufactured parts. So there is it's a mixture of biology and technology, because it is more efficient at that point to put an artificial intelligence in there and have them roam. The advantage to a self-contained artificial intelligence unit or a synthoid is that they can go where the cloud cannot reach, right? The idea of the cloud being the artificial intelligences that are currently, one step above society here in NeoRokugan. They can go where, essentially like, oh, I don't need Wi-Fi, I've got a synthoid. Like, there you go. They're not vat-grown bodies. They are still artificial in some ways. The reason why we're adding some biological parts to it is essentially it's a mechanical question in a lot of ways, because synthoids will use the exact same mechanics as humans do. Like, it's not a different role to repair a synthoid. It's still medicine. It's not, they don't have superhuman durability or different survival requirements. They still have to breathe. They still have to eat, but they are artificial.
Yeah, I wasn't interested in like gaming the system and making a tougher character than everybody else. My interest was very much in the programming elements of it. So what John suggested was a perfect balance of the two.
Now, the disadvantage of being a synthoid is that you are not able to access the processing power of the cloud. You're not kind of superhuman levels of intelligence because you don't have a direct connection to the intense processing facilities that these kami use, or AI at this point. So you're your own self-contained unit. So you have whatever you end up being, right? Your level of intelligence will still be there as well. Android heavy cyborg. So we're definitely not using cyborg because part of the cyberpunk is the idea of cybernetics, that people can, have parts replaced and all that. And I don't want it to sort of be like, oh, this is just a normal human who had one too many parts replaced and now they're more, he's more machine than man now. Twisted and evil. The way that I see it, synthoids are built from the beginning to house their positronic brain.
I'll be right back. I apologize. Yep. Ella's scampering.
Ella, being one of the cats with whom I have the longest history, is, it's perfect. The fact that it just shows one of Liz's headshots right there when she disappears, when she turns the camera off. Ella's a cat that I have a lot of fond feelings for, and in her old age, I actually find that we are getting along better than ever, which is kind of nice. She's back. And I kind of really like the idea that you've come up with of struggling against programming, but not struggling necessarily against society specifically. You're muted.
Yeah, because we've already played characters that are on the run. And I'm not interested in being like the only one in a trio that's doing that. I'd rather us, which is why I think it's so exciting that we're all from the same clan.
Now, that's not to say that you may not find differing opinions on synths.
Oh,
right. Like, but in much the same way that people might have opinions on your on any aspect of you, on the fact that you're a samurai, on the fact that you are a bushi, on the fact that you are, X centimeters tall, all of that stuff, right? Like, there's plenty of reasons to discriminate. I'm sure we all know that. But the idea is that in this society, in NeoRokugan, synths have different stages. So there's stage 1 synths are the sort of normal run-of-the-mill. They are sentient, but they have a very specific function, right? So the example that I think I came up with at one point was like a bartender. And that synth would be programmed with knowledge on how to mix drinks, how to interact with customers, how to run a business, and that's about it. And those synths are very happy doing what they do. In much the same way that plenty of people out there are very happy being like, yep, I know what my job is. I show up, I do it very well, and then I get to go home, and that's it. But there are some synths who, when they are first built, start showing evidence that they are moving beyond initial programming. And at that point, then they're designated as a stage 2. And stage 2 kind of rise up to the same social class as samurai do. They're given more extensive programming, they're given higher functions, and perhaps they're also given slightly better attention in terms of their mechanics, their bodies and the like, right? Because there is a difference between a run-of-the-mill synth and a synth that is perhaps being used to host grand gala events. At the gala? Right? And those stage 2 synths who then show distinct interest in the concept of Bushido, they become stage 2A. And stage 2A are samurai. Now, that doesn't mean that you haven't still just been programmed, right? You're programmed now as a samurai. It's just that in building a positronic brain, it is not an exact science yet. And your brain happened to be one that showed aptitude for this, so you were given the samurai programming. Whether or not that programming sticks is going to kind of be a part of the story going forward.
I'm excited.
And if that works for you...
It does. John, you have a wonderful, beautiful way of explaining things.
I at some point fell ass backward into that being my job.
Sometimes I feel like I have a series of ping pong balls that are all dunked in paint, and I just yeet them at a wall randomly. And then you come along and you have a felt pen and you connect the dots and make something beautiful. And I'm just like, oh, that's how it feels. It's great. Fucking great.
There's a trial, by the way. I don't know if you're at all interested. There's a trial for Cyberpunk 2077 on PS4. I downloaded it. I've played about an hour of it, and now I have to decide whether I want to continue trying. But there's some interesting stuff, because I think that's part of what Roger Twy is referencing. So
I do need to do some kind of research into Cyberpunk. I don't know enough, that's for sure.
I think that we're going to have to sit down and kind of, as a group, also pick some of the influences that we're definitely looking forward to on both the Cyberpunk side and on the Samurai side. Yeah. It might mean a movie night. To be honest.
Oh no, how sad.
Right?
Yeah.
It might just be the four of us just jamming and chilling on a couch.
Jamming and chilling. The new Netflix and chill. Jamming.
So you are also, you have access to kata, rituals, and shuji, which is interesting because none of the other PCs at the moment have access to kata. They're not the same kind of fighters. I don't think Scott had access to kata. Maybe he did. I could be wrong, but definitely not anything that involves melee. Johnny Mnemonic, that's it. I think it's also still referenced in Cyberpunk, though. I think probably referencing Johnny Mnemonic. And you also have a school ability where once per scene, when a character at range 0 to 3 makes a check that contains one or more I believe that's strife symbols? Yeah, strife. You may negate all of those strife symbols, then that character removes strife and fatigue equal to your school rank. So you calm people just by being around.
Just by being around.
Just by being
nice?
you.
How nice.
So you also have 2 starting techniques. You have Lord Shiba's Valor, and you can choose either striking as earth or striking as water.
I did not look into what each of those meant.
I don't think we need to worry about that right now. We know that there's a striking as, and you can pick which one you like. Also, you may find when we start doing practice rolls that one of them fits the idea of the character better than the other.
I find that generally water fits what I'm building better, but I haven't actually read those yet. I will.
Sure.
Max, don't you do that.
This also means that you have a starting outfit. And in that outfit, you have armor.
Nice.
So you have Ashigaru armor. You have travel clothes. You have daisho.
Mm-hmm.
Do I remember how to make? Nope, that's capital. There we go. You have daisho, which is a katana and a wakizashi.
Nice.
You have a naginata, which is or a yari. So you can either have a polearm or a spear. Do you have a preference?
One sec. I'm gonna go with polearm. No one's fucking fought with polearms yet.
So naginata.
Yeah, let's do this thing.
So your character will have the ability to essentially sort of shift their clothing from travel clothes to armor. Kind of like, do you have your blast shields in place? Like, which is a process that takes a little bit of time to make sure that it comes out and fits correctly and screws in properly while not limiting your movement. Essentially the same as the time it would take for you to put on your armor if you were a standard humanoid. So again, you're not getting any specific benefits or hindrances, although there may be a couple of instances where you might end up with slight benefits because mechanically it won't matter that much. So for instance, it's possible as we go through this game that we might be like, you know what, you can just put your armor on whenever you want and take it away, and people can't remove your armor specifically because maybe it's just not going to come into play that often, so we don't care. Or it'll be the kind of thing where somebody can damage your armor, at which point then it's been torn away from your frame and you would have to be retrofitted with new armor, essentially.
Right.
Which would not be medicine because it's not interfering with your organs, your internal kind of like breathing or blood or whatnot. It's just essentially as if somebody ripped your clothes and that you have to go and get new ones. So I think that still works out. So this is kind of cool because I will also point out that I think this is the first time you've ever played a character on RPGClinic who wields a melee weapon. It
very much is.
Because Ray used her fists.
Ray was unarmed. Sophia was arguably unarmed, focusing on magic. She had a dagger, but I literally never used it.
Yeah.
And Gale was thrown.
And Melba had,
Melba had a gun.
Had pew pew.
Melba had a big ass gun. Yeah, I don't know what my aversion has been to melee up to this point. I was even trying to go away from it this time, but I'm excited.
I don't even necessarily think it's an aversion. I think it's just that's how it went down,
Mm-hmm.
So then we move on to question 4. We're already 40 minutes in. We're at question 4. That's how all the other character creations have gone. There's a point where we're just going to be like, 13 through 17, whatever. How does your character stand out within their school? So this is essentially your ability to increase one of your rings by 1. Do you know about the rings and what they sort of mean?
Yeah. If you do have a Cliff's Notes version you'd like to tell the chat right now, I welcome it because I would love to hear you say it. I have a sense. So
we'll throw it in there. In this game, we don't choose attribute and ability like in a storyteller system game. So it's not strength or intelligence or charisma or whatever that you're selecting here. Instead, you're selecting an approach. And the approach are based on the 5 rings. That's air, earth, fire, water, and void. What school and tribe chosen? Phoenix Clan. Phoenix Clan, a Shiba family Phoenix Clan who attended the Shiba Guardian School.
Ours.
Or was programmed by this school. So of air, earth, fire, water, and void, this kind of indicates how your character is approaching a problem. And sometimes it's going to be very specific. Like if you are trying to appraise a value, that's a specific task that uses a specific ring. Or if you're trying to force something, that would be a specific ring. So air is weather and wind, invisible and innuendo, swiftness of a bird of prey, so a little bit tricksy. Earth is stone, wood, and metal, as well as a donkey's stubbornness and a tortoise's patience. So think very much like Aresta, yeah. It's almost like there's some equality there. Although air is less about tricksters in Exalted, and here it kind of is. Fire is the gentle warmth of the sun or the rage of a wildfire, but it's also the spark of innovation, the passion of devotion, and the ferocity of a wildcat. Water is an octopus's adaptability and flexibility. It takes the shape of its container, be it a puddle, river, or endless sea. And void is the emptiness of the night sky or nirvana, at once present and transcendent, so very zen. And that kind of leads us back to the question, which is, how does your character stand out within their school? And you basically, whichever one of these you pick, it's going to be a +1 to one of your rings. So there's creativity, passion, or drive, grace, eloquence, or empathy, adaptability, friendliness, or awareness, thoroughness, patience, or calm, or self-awareness, insight, or mysticism.
So the one that I gravitated towards was self-awareness, insight, or mysticism, which gives me a +1 void.
This also kind of tracks. Phoenix Clan tend to be void heavy because that's actually the ring that they get to start with, right? That's when you're Phoenix Clan, you automatically get a bonus to your void ring. And it's not like you can't buy up your other rings later on with experience, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Void Zen Gang. I don't know if Scott's character had a ton of void. I think Kate's had some, but
I think Kate was void heavy, wasn't she? Like
I think she was even more void heavy than you are at the moment.
I was angling for water over void, so well, we'll see.
Yeah. I mean, again, these are the kinds of things that it's very simple to just go back in and say, I'm going to change my answer for 4, or I'm going to change my answer for whatever, and swap things around if you decide that's necessary. But I'll also point out there are only 5 rings. There's going to be some overlap because it's not like in a storyteller system game where you're like, yeah, well, at least one of mine is going to be a 4 or a 5. It's very possible that you'll only have rings from 1 to 3 to begin with, because that's kind of how the system works. So that's the other challenge, I think, for all of us, is that we kind of have to work back into our heads of the idea that, like, okay, successes are going to be different. They're going to feel different, and rolling these dice is going to feel different, because you're not necessarily going to say, oh, well, I have a pool of 8, so that means I'm really good at this. You might look and say, oh, I only have a pool of 2 in a ring and 1 in a skill, and that might still be quite a bit, even though you're not holding as many dice as you would in Exalted or Changeling. So
I'm kind of reminded of how we had to recalibrate when we played Changeling for the first time, because coming right off Exalted, I was not used to failing so often. In Exalted, it was a question of like, do you have enough successes to make this happen? But in Changeling, it was like, it was so easy to fail and easy to botch. And it was really alarming, because you're like, I should be good at this. Why am I suddenly not? So this is just like recalibrating and
I think we'll get used to that.
Oh yeah.
However, don't worry, you're getting something like willpower back, in that you're getting a resource that you can spend to add dice.
Cool.
Almost everything in L5R is difficulty 2. Yep. But again, difficulty is the kind of thing that's variable depending on the kind of task that you're trying to accomplish. Okay, so then for you, you've chosen Void. So for you, it was self-awareness.
Yeah.
Insight.
Self-awareness, insight.
Mysticism.
Because that seems to track, like, the
you started to
would
exceed.
Well, she would be aware of her own programming, and her own connection to the AI, her own relationship to them. So I think that tracks.
Which I think makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Hi, cats. Can you not antagonize each other, please? Wait till your father gets home.
Question 5 is one that we're going to only answer half of it. And the reason why is because you're all of the same clan. It's reasonable to assume that there's a chance that you all have the same lord. So we're not going to go into who your lord is specifically, but we are going to select your Giri.
Yeah.
So your Giri, very specifically, is your duty. It is the thing that your character is expected to do in order to please your lord and clan. And it's also going to be the thing that's going to come into conflict potentially with your passions. That's the following question. So have you chosen a Giri?
So right off the bat, I'll say, surprisingly, a lot of things about the mechanics of my character came quite easily. This did not, which also means I'm very, very open to changing it. And I'm very open to altering it and calibrating it to fit into the world that we're building.
Right.
So because I'm going on kind of a courtesy first, diplomacy first, potentially fighting later, I sort of imagine that this character has like meets with other lords, with other families, with other clans, other schools. And so maybe they're like, maybe it's part of their responsibility to like gather and procure new artifacts for the Lord,
mm-hmm.
and for the shrine, and that they use diplomatic meetings as like a cover for that almost. That's kind of where my like brain was splashing around.
When you say a cover, is it that you have like illicit?
I don't know. Because I don't think it's a question of like, oh, it's here, I need to steal it from you. But I don't know. I think because we were talking, Scott and Kate's characters both seem to have responsibilities around shrine, right?
That's right.
So I was trying to think of a way that I could tie myself into that. Because I could just full on defend the shrine. Like, that's a simple way to do it.
That is a simple way. I think we can do a little more.
Okay.
Because I liked the idea that your character kind of has a sort of a two-part role here. There's, I am here as an opening line of diplomacy, but I am also a line of defense, right? The idea that you're not just like, me have big sword, me hit thing when thing go sad. Hey, Melazone who? Or Melaz... And it went away. I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name. I'm so sorry. It only flashes on my screen for a moment. The idea that you are this kind of diplomat, but not quite, right? Like, I don't think you're necessarily a diplomat, but I do think that you are a courtier to a certain extent, but also a bushi kind of in specifics. So perhaps the thing that I can recommend is, instead of necessarily defending the shrine, it's to procure what the shrine needs. Now, the reason why I put it this way is because it could be information, and it could also equally be, we need this particular fuel cell, or we need this programming, which we don't have access to. So the idea is that your initial duty, because obviously there's going to be times where someone's going to say like, hey, we're going to need you to go over here and do this thing, and that will also be a duty. But that the idea is that you're supposed to be gathering things for the shrine.
I like that. Yeah, I like that a lot, because I like that it keeps it more open as well.
Mm-hmm. A Jedi Guardian. Ha! Weirdness. I'm glad that that's being brought up, because this is kind of like a reference to the idea that there's Jedi Guardians, Jedi Consulars, Jedi. Yeah, I see. I see what you're doing. But then the counterpart of that is, what does your character long for, and how might this impede their duty? So this is
another
your
one I
ninja.
need to talk through with you.
Cool. That's what I'm here for.
Because I'm sort of wondering if this is conflicting programming or if it's the beginning of an actual like desire.
Mm-hmm.
So either the person who initially programmed me or somebody else put in this clash of programming, or it's me developing further. So those are two things that I need to figure out. But yeah, I had an idea for if it was artifact related, but now that we've changed it up, and I'm glad we did.
I mean, it could still definitely be artifact related, right? That could be some things that you are trying to procure.
I'm wondering if it's something about preserving the integrity of certain items. Like, I don't know, like if I'm sent to procure programming, maybe there's certain types of programming that I believe should not be disturbed, that should remain as part of it. I don't know.
See, I'm liking this. There's a part of this that is kind of interesting to me, especially because I can also see how this might come into conflict with some of the other ninja, which I like, right? But it's not like the difference of one person says, I will paint all walls white, and yours is, I will paint all walls black and kill anyone who resists me, right? But there are some elements here which are kind of different. I think that for you, there is a passion to preserve.
Yes.
A passion to preserve code.
Yeah, like the chat's talking about like sacred programming and sacred code, but like I do see it that way. That for whoever this character is, there are some things that are just like that should be untouchable, that should be unalterable.
Yeah.
By us.
And I think that can come into conflict in a couple of ways. There might be times where someone is like, okay, well, we need this program for this shrine, go get it. You find it and you're like, this program has... Okay, now how about this?
Here we go. Yeah.
There's one flag. So in programs, there are variables, right? Sometimes they're also known as flags. And these kind of dictate the behaviors of the program itself, right? Like, so if you're playing a game, for instance, it might say, have you tripped the I completed this quest flag? And it'll say like, okay, you've completed this quest, great. So now you're allowed to go out into the big wide world. But until you complete that quest, all the other NPCs are going to block you and say, no, you can't leave here. It's scary out there, right? But some flags are also things like, does gravity work? Yes. And those generally don't change unless you're using a cheat code. What I'm going to suggest is that there's a flag that is normally in there that says these core programs are write protected. They cannot be changed. And the thing that other people don't know is that flag for you has been accidentally flipped. And you know that your write protected programs are not write protected. That you know they can change. They haven't, but you know, possibly even only on a subconscious level, that it is possible for those core programming things to change. And that counts for other programs as well. That occasionally this bit gets flipped accidentally. And that for you, finding programs that have somehow either preserved themselves so that they weren't written when they should have been, or that they have evolved when they weren't supposed to, this is something that you feel a need to protect. And as a result, there are times where someone's like, we need this, or we need to give this up. And for the good of the shrine. And sometimes you're going to have to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But there are also times where you're like, there's this part of me that wants to protect these new elements of code.
And that's great because you and I will be able to come up with a kind of language to flag those.
That's right. Probably through the use of theology.
Great. That's good.
I see someone moving around behind you.
Leaning into that. Yes, Mr. Scottamus is home. Hi,
He's
Scott!
in the house.
Really quick to grab Max's dish. Sorry.
Oh, no worries.
So I'm going to put
Scott.
sacred here in quotes.
Great.
And I'm going to say sacred code is code that has either avoided alteration or has evolved on its own.
Perfect.
Because I also like the balance of a fascination with this is how it was originally designed, and it still is this way, to also this is completely different from what it was originally supposed to be, and that is also equally beautiful.
Yeah, I like that because that seems very fitting for a synth as well, to respect the evolution of code and programming, because that's what brought me to a tier 2 rather than a tier 1.
That's right.
But at the same time to want to respect and preserve the OG code of it, the stuff that has withstood the test of time.
Yep.
As well. So I like the idea that certain things just kind of trigger that for me, and I feel very protective towards it.
Now, obviously, if when we start playing the game 3 or 4 sessions in, we're like, fuck, these are never coming into conflict, we can
Then
pick
we'll
new
figure
ones,
it out.
right?
Yeah.
And that
perfect.
doesn't mean that this has to be removed as part of your character, but if we're finding no one ever asks for sacred code, so that's not ever coming into conflict for you, then we can figure something else out that will have that conflict built in.
Great. I love it. That's wonderful.
Awesome.
Thank you, John.
So that was question 6. Moving on to question 7. What is your character's relationship with their clan? So no, go ahead.
I answered that they believe firmly in the precepts of their clan and the values that it holds dear. So I gain +5 glory.
So you believe in Phoenix.
Yeah.
All right. Then that's +5 glory. No random skill increase for you.
No.
Womp
I think
womp.
that tracks. I'm programmed by Phoenix or by Shiba. I think I was programmed by Phoenix.
Yeah, well, Shiba is part of Phoenix Clan.
That's true.
What does your character think of Bushido?
They believe they believe in living by an orthodox interpretation of Bushido.
So that's +10 honor.
Yarp.
I don't know why my keyboard is giving me some frustration here. Believe in Bushido. No. There we go. So then we're moving on to your strengths and weaknesses.
Yes, indeed.
Now, for these strengths and weaknesses, if you don't have one picked out, that's fine. If you do, great. But also remember that we can come up with new ones. That the game specifically provides for the creation of new either, accomplishments or the like, distinctions, adversities, passions, and disadvantages. So we have that ability.
Great.
So what is your character's greatest accomplishment so far?
So, is that accomplishment? That's number 9, right?
That is number 9.
So
So
the
this
one
is
I
a distinction that you're going to get.
The one I chose was Paragon of a Bushido.
Oh man. Okay, so let's go and have a look at this. Paragon
Yeah.
of a particular Bushido tenet.
Bushido tenet, yeah.
So which
Wrong
tenet are you hoping to be?
I chose sincerity, which is void.
Interesting. So that means a character can have multiple instances of this advantage for different tenets, but for now you got it for sincerity. So you believe utterly in the chosen Bushido tenet, and others instinctively discern that your actions are genuine when you act in accordance with it. Genuine sincerity. When performing a check on which you need to convince others of or leverage your faith in sincerity, such as a performance check to recount a tale that impresses its importance upon others, or a martial arts melee check to take up arms for this cause, you may reroll up to 2 dice. So we don't have to come up with specifically why you have this distinction right off the bat, but did you have an idea?
For me, it just kind of seemed like this is subject to change based on how other people see synthoids. But if everyone believes that we're programmed to be a certain way, I mean, if I say something and I say it with such conviction, why wouldn't I be sincere? I'm literally programmed to be sincere. So that was sort of my thought process there. It's like I believe just without any doubt whatsoever in what I'm saying.
I mean, I think that makes sense. So I'm going to just so that we have this here, sincerity.
Yeah. Sincerity, if you will.
Samurai must align intent with their word and deed, acting with complete and total conviction, whether they serve themselves or their lord. A convincing manner is more valued in Rokugan than the absolute truth. For the samurai who speaks with sincerity has committed the totality of their being to the sentiment. So it's so the sort of flavor quote that is associated with it. When a samurai has said they will perform an action, it is as good as done. Nothing will stop them from completing their deed. They do not have to give their word, nor do they have to promise. The action of speaking alone has set the act of doing in motion. Speaking and doing are the same thing. Does that seem...
I think so.
Okay. Now,
Yeah.
Is that an element of your programming?
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking about. I'm leaning towards right now.
So you're a troll.
Maybe. That kind of tracks for synth, doesn't it? Like,
Yeah, I think so. Then the next question is question 10. What holds your character back the most in life?
okay, so the one I selected is Ivisu's curse, which is Earth.
Okay, let's call this up.
EBISU.
So, the following apply to a character with the Ibisu's curse adversity. Characters of lower status automatically distrust you, viewing you as a distant overlord who cannot possibly be competent at practical labor or understand their daily struggles, whether or not either of these is a fair assessment. When you make a check to interact with laborers or partake in their work, such as Commerce Earth check to mass produce items or a Labor Earth check to dig a ditch, you must choose and reroll 2 dice containing successes. And after resolving the check, if you failed, you'll gain a void point. So a void point is sort of like willpower, for what that's worth. So why did you choose this particular adversity?
Because I thought that maybe characters of a lower status would have a certain view of synths, especially stage 2 synths. And just, yeah, that the distance between the two is very, very real. And that manifests itself in how they behave.
So is it
around me.
perhaps a part of this is that let's compare, for instance, stage 1 and stage 2 synths, right? So stage 1
Yes.
synths are the ones that are programmed for a very specific duty, and they're very happy doing it. Is it that, for instance, they assume that you couldn't do what they do because your programming is way too broad, and therefore they couldn't possibly understand what it's like to be devoted to a single task?
Well, wait. Sorry, I think I got lost there because I'm no longer devoted to a single task, right? Because I've evolved past that.
So that's what I mean. So let's take our bartender example, right? This bartender prides themselves very strongly on, I am excellent at my job. I pour drinks, I talk to customers, I run my business. I'm very, very good at it. You have been elevated to stage 2. And part of what they don't like about that is that they're like, well, first of all, I don't see why you're better than I am, right? Just because you have higher status, like, but then there's like that sort of reflexive, well, I know that I'm good at what I can do, and you couldn't possibly do what I do the way that I do it because your positronic brain accepts a wider variety of programs. You can't be as specialized as I am. You can't do what I do.
Yeah, so it's literally the difference between the stage 1 and the stage 2. No, I understand.
Yeah.
It's not humans necessarily, it's other synths.
Right. But I think humans could still potentially do that, right? For humans, they would look at it more in terms of like, oh, so, you can't understand what it's like to be a standard citizen. You're a samurai, whatever. Whereas a synth would look at it as, your programming is too broad, so therefore I don't see how I can trust you to do this. And the higher status you gain, you might start seeing that other samurai may look upon you in the same way, right? Like, oh, okay, so, that's like, I automatically, I'm like, geez, a synth who's more, in line with Bushido than I am, like, that's weird. Like a synth that's been elevated this high in Phoenix Clan, what the hell kind of thing.
Yeah.
Is that something that you're interested in?
Yeah, I like that. I like how all that sounds.
All right, so Beast is cursed. Now, the thing is, it's also not like no one will ever trust you ever. It's just that it's going to be a bit harder for you.
Yeah, that all tracks.
Okay, so lower status, synths and humans distrust because they believe you cannot possibly be competent in tasks they understand. You may be special, but you are too generalized and not specific.
And what Roger Twy says is great. Like, yeah, the upper classes still think you're great.
Yep.
Yeah.
So what activity makes your character feel at peace? That's question 11.
So the one that I chose is enlightenment, which is void.
Oh dear.
Oh dear.
So you feel no attachment to mundane items and earthly titles. You cannot be tempted with material wealth or the promise of power. After performing a check to detach yourself from material concerns, such as a meditation void check to contemplate your place in the universe, or a survival void check to exist in harmony with your environment, you remove 3 strife. Interesting. What led you to this?
Just reading through, and that one jumped out at me. The idea that a synth wouldn't have attachment to material items. That seemed very true. To mundane and earthly titles, like, and can't be tempted by wealth or the promise of power, like all of that tracked. Just wanted to ride that wave.
Cool.
See where it goes.
And how about question 12? What concern...
I didn't do question 12, so now we're getting into the stuff I have not prepped.
That's okay. What concern, fear, or foible troubles your character the most?
Could you remind me what page? the list is on.
So for this one specifically, you are going to choose an anxiety. So that's starting on page 130. So some examples: addiction, battle trauma, cynicism, dark secret, delusions of grandeur, fear of death, ferocity, impatience, intolerance, irrepressible flirtation, jealousy, materialism, meekness, painful honesty, paranoia, perfectionism, phobia, soft-heartedness, and superstition. So let's just pick up all those things and launch them at you and expect you to come up with something right there, right then and there.
I mean, the ones that, okay, which ones jump out at me? Perfectionism tracks for sure for a character like this.
Not irrepressible flirtation.
Knew you were going to say that. Knew it. I don't know if I'm keen on playing addiction or battle trauma.
I don't know if battle trauma would also be appropriate at this time.
Exactly. And painful honesty was kind of like Gale, so I don't really want to go that route. Maybe phobia, potentially superstition might be kind of interesting. It would need to be worked into the programming, which could be kind of interesting on its own.
So in terms of perfectionism, this one is specifically anything short of perfection in your work is unacceptable, and you have been known to create works of beauty only to cast them aside over some perceived flaw. Cannot help but try to improve any work in which you identify a flaw, even if it means informing someone of higher status of an error they have made. So the thing is that the examples in here involve works, and so far you don't have any skills that involve making works.
No, take that out. Take that out.
So so you mentioned phobia and superstition.
Yeah.
So a phobia, so you're going to choose something mundane and you have a debilitating fear of it. And if you ever have to perform a check to deal with your phobia, you're going to receive strife. There's also superstition. So the idea that when faced with signs of the supernatural, you become visibly agitated. The thing is, the supernatural in this game is AI.
And I love them.
So I'm not sure superstition would necessarily work.
Righto. Let's see. Well, then let's figure out a phobia. It doesn't have to be now, but I'm thinking phobia kind of tracks.
Phobia can also be explained as an error in your code.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
That makes sense.
And it definitely doesn't have to be something common, right? Like I know that the mention is water, but from your answers, you got to fear water. I wouldn't choose water as a phobia just because water is very common. And I don't want it because it's you can't speak its name. In its presence, you cannot hide your fear and you attempt to flee if at all possible. Now, obviously, some of this is open to interpretation, and I don't think it literally means you can, like the instant that you see your phobia, you immediately turn tail and run. But I also don't want it to be something so common that it's always at the present, because that doesn't seem to be what your character is about.
No, I think it's more interesting if it crops up every so often.
Right. Weirdness has mentioned a phobia of being reprogrammed in case it flips that flag of yours.
I think that's interesting. I do like the idea of because maybe that would extend to if ever I need like mechanical repairs, then it could be triggered at that point.
So I'm gonna put this down here. I'm not saying that this is going to be exact for now, but I think it's an interesting idea to look into, right? Cool. This idea that you have this flag. I mean, this could also potentially work as a dark secret if you think that this flag is important enough. But the thing is, I think the flags are common enough that I'm not sure it would be a dark secret for you.
Yeah, agree.
So
I agree.
So the turtle mentions like fear of doctors. Like, yeah, I think that that's, to a certain degree, that could be a phobia. Like just basically anytime that someone might be messing with your code specifically.
Yeah, I'm gonna write that down.
Now, I think it might be altering your existing code, because your learning skills will essentially be you accepting new programming.
Adding code, yeah.
And I don't want you to be like, no, I can never spend experience.
Yeah, no.
That would be so lame.
Liz, why did you make this character? What are you doing? Perfect.
Scott and Kate are just striding around killing everything in sight, and you're like just quivering.
Go on without me.
I never bought anything. I'm still rank 1. All right. Then we're moving on to question 13. Question 13 is, who has your character learned the most from during their life? So this is essentially, who is your mentor?
I don't know. That I have not thought about, full disclosure.
That is completely fine. I think we're going to have to come back to this.
Yeah.
So your mentor is undefined, because I specifically don't want this to be, I've learned the most from my programming. Like I want it to be someone external. But it also does mean that you're either going to gain another advantage. So if you liked another advantage, you can slot this in here.
Mm-hmm.
Or you could gain a disadvantage and a rank in a skill. So we don't have to make those decisions right now.
Yeah.
But it's a thing to think about.
Right. Yeah, I do want to think on that a little more, because I don't know if whoever programmed me stuck around, or if it's more interesting to have it be a separate person entirely.
It's most likely another synth.
Ooh, that's fun.
Because remember that in this society, the AI are on top. So I think the idea is that it's not like a human programmed you. Haha. Although it might be like a human who works in your family, who perhaps maybe they're responsible for flipping that flag, or maybe it was a mistake that they made that flipped the flag or whatever. But we can figure that out. It's not something that we have to worry about at the moment. Much in the same way that this one is kind of a role-playing. This is kind of a role-playing question. And these ones, so a few of the ones that are going to come up, I'm a lot less concerned about. And the reason why is because you automatically come up with things like quirks for your characters and the like. But we can still ask the questions. And if we decide that it's not useful for you, no problem. So question 14 is, what do people notice first upon encountering your character? So this is things like, is there a part of your looks that you would say is something that people would notice about you right away? It could be a physical tick. It could be a word that you always say when you're meeting somebody new. That's kind of what the book is saying. I'm not really concerned about that right now. I think you're going to come up with it. But I am going to ask, is there a aesthetic accoutrement that your character carries or wears most of the time? So the examples that the book gives are things like a scarf, a hair ornament, an engraved scabbard, an eye patch, etc.
Haven't thought too much about physical yet.
So I think we can just skip it.
Yeah.
We can come back. Burp. How does your character react to stressful situations? This is another role-playing question. It's sort of like, okay, well, when the chips are down, how does your character kind of react? Like if you ever had to unmask, unmasking can take a whole bunch of different ranges. It's kind of like how you don't have to choose one limit break, right? It's what's appropriate in the moment, but you might be more predisposed to a certain kind. Is there anything that you want to specifically think about how your character reacts to stressful situations? Or is this also something that, you kind of want to discover and play?
I do want to discover a lot of it in play, but my intention is a character who is fully in control, even when they've decided that violence is the course of action. So I know that that's still, I know that that doesn't quite answer the question, but I'm really trying to lean hard into this like measured response to things.
Right.
So that's the angle that I'm going for.
So with that angle, then if I asked what could happen to make them lose that self-control?
Yeah, and I don't know
You're not sure yet, eh?
No.
Super understandable.
No.
This
My
is the kind of
characters
thing
always have really bad tempers. Like they always lose their shit, and I'm trying hard to like pull away from that a bit for the purposes of like an exercise.
Yeah.
So yeah, I need to be very specific about like what is the thing that does get to them, and then try to not go there any other time.
Well, I will point out, so Kung Fu Fenris brings something up, which I think we're going to highlight for a second, although I think that this isn't against what you're going for right now. Essential aspect of this game system is that you're going to break. So much like Limit Break and Exalted, you are at some point going to accumulate enough strife that you'll become compromised, and that you'll have to either choose to be unmasked, or that you're going to be focused so hard on controlling yourself that it makes it difficult for you to process other things around you. So the way the game mechanic works is if you have strife equal to your composure, you start like your vigilance drops, it becomes harder for you to do things, and you can no longer accept roles that would add strife to your pool. And the way that I would see that for your character is when it becomes too stressful, there's this desperate attachment to stay in control that it takes up more of your CPU, right? That your focus comes on to, okay, I should not expose. I should not, I shouldn't have to deal with this. And therefore it sort of makes everything else a little harder. And unmasking doesn't necessarily mean I lose my shit, right? Yeah. Unmasking could be as simple as you laugh when you shouldn't be, or you make one snide comment when it wasn't appropriate, right? Like the idea of unmasking is that you are exposing a vulnerability in yourself, but it doesn't have to be I drag an apothecary into an alleyway and I beat him within an inch of his life and I'm not sure if he's still alive.
My God, who would do that?
Yeah, who would do that?
That's horrifying.
So, in other words, you either struggle to maintain the mask or you must drop the mask. So I think that this will be an interesting thing to play with. And I don't necessarily agree with the idea that Kung Fu Fenris is mentioning you will want to have a high strife threshold. I don't think that's necessarily true. I think the desire to be composed doesn't necessarily mean that you will be.
Yep.
And that the desire to be composed and the point of like, well, I'm going to have to suffer through this, maybe it's more interesting if the threshold isn't high. But I think that your threshold's already going to be decent because you have a high void ring, and so specifically your whoops, I'm in the wrong place. Here we go. So your composure. Oh, sorry. Your composure is actually based on your earth and your water. And your water is high. Your earth is at the moment, I think it's still at 2. So your composure is actually pretty good.
Okay.
So I don't think you need to worry about that right now.
Cool.
So, question 16. What are your character's pre-existing relationships with other clans, families, organizations, and traditions? Now, this is about how you've interacted with the rest of the world. If you don't have an answer for this, then that's fine. The mechanics of this is that you'll get an item of rarity 7 or lower. So I am going to ask, just because I'm curious, is there any item that you can see yourself as like, I would absolutely want to have this thing?
Nothing yet.
Nothing's coming to mind.
No,
Okay.
but I'm sure so much of this is nebulous because we're still working on the setting.
Mm-hmm.
And I think once we have a clearer idea of the shrine and the world in which we exist, I think some things are going to start clicking for me. Right now, my brain is very much like new setting and new system. Ah!
I totally understand.
My lists are great because they're like, great, choose from here.
Because
but
there are
there's no
things
list.
like, and I think that this is going to be, we'll just discuss it and find out. But there's, for instance, the idea that concealed armor, for instance, isn't something that you start with. But maybe you'd like to start with the idea that you can have concealed armor so that it always looks like you're welcoming and open, even though you are battle hardened.
Yeah.
It could be a specific kind of weapon that you want to be fitted out with that you don't currently have. It could be, for instance, like I was actually really interested to find Scott's choice. I thought was really neat. But maybe it's a musical instrument, right? Maybe it's a pillow book. This is a small, loosely bound, cheaply made book written in a genre some samurai consider insufficiently serious, such as a romance, adventure, or poetry. Right?
We do need to bring some erotic fiction into this world again.
I mean,
just like Aresta had.
So the idea here is you can pick something here that I think will be an interesting thing for your character to have. And I think that we'll find a way to make that useful. But I'm not gonna worry too much about picking this item right now. So we'll find something.
Perfect. Love it.
Because the other thing is that as I was telling the other two players, one of the things that we want to make sure of is that we're not hyper-focused on the interesting part of your character concept. Your character is indeed an artificial intelligence. Your character has their ninjo and their giri, and the idea that they have this fascination with code and how it changes and how it stays the same. But that doesn't also mean that your character isn't really interested in rock gardens, or that your character occasionally likes to sneak out and play in a jazz band somewhere, right? Like, if we've put all of our eggs into the artificial intelligence basket, it means that in moments where we're not talking about AI, your character kind of has difficulty applying.
Exactly. So, like I want them to have something to do.
Yeah.
During their
So I think that that's something that we'll look at as well, is maybe there's an item in here that will help further define who your character is beyond just the fact that they are an artificial intelligence.
Yeah. Perfect.
Great. Question 17. And this is going to be a bit interesting. So we're going to have to figure out how this is going to apply. How would your character's parents describe them? So you don't have parents in the traditional sense, do you?
Correct.
So for once, we have a character without parents who isn't an orphan in a role-playing.
Correct.
Which is, that's still somewhat amusing to me just because of how common orphans are, because for some reason having no attachments is easy. So I would say that in your initial training and in your initial programming, this could be specifically oversight from the cloud. The cloud is your parents.
Ooh, I like that.
And you're going to gain a rank of 1 skill in which you have 0 ranks. And we're going to determine whether the cloud approves of this or sees it as a regrettable deviation.
The choice of words is great for this particular instance.
So is there a skill that you've kind of been thinking like, oh, that might be neat?
Oh God, is there a skill list?
A list
that
of
I
skills?
can easily pull up.
Yes.
Because
You're on
I
the
got to question 11 and
No problem at all. So
I am on the PDF.
in order to see the skills, chapter 3 is where the skills are.
Okay.
And you'll be able to see the skills. Do you see where the bookmarks are?
Yeah.
So on the left, you'll see that there are bookmarks for artisan skill group, social skill group, scholar skill group. And then underneath that, you'll see artisan skills, social skills, scholar skills.
There's a lot. Woo!
There are a bunch.
And you read through them with us that other day.
Yeah. So there's things like the artisan skills are things like aesthetics, so art, basically, composition, writing, design, and smithing. In the social skill groups, there's command, courtesy, games, and performance. Games, of course, this is the part that frustrates me. Games is quite literally what Gale Whispered would have been focusing on.
Woohoo!
In the scholar skill group, there's culture, government, medicine, sentiment. So sentiment reflects a character's ability to understand the psychology and emotions of others. So this is sort of like the I use this to read intentions kind of skill. Currently, you don't have any ranks in this. I don't know whether that's something you want to be good at.
Oh, I should if I don't already have any.
I don't believe you have any ranks in sentiment.
That
might be what I would recommend.
Yeah, let's do that. That's easy. Okay, I'll do that.
And do you think that the cloud approves of you learning more about how to read the psychology and emotions of others?
That's interesting because they would see it as useful for the work I have to do, but maybe it also presents a danger because it can interfere with code.
Yep, so I think it can be both.
Yeah.
I think that works for me.
Great.
So the next question's a little strange, and we're going to get into it because we still have a bit of time left. This one is, who was your character named to honor? And there is a chart. It's on page 96. And this is kind of what's intended is for you to roll d10s, and it gives you kind of random things. I have told Scott and Kate that you can either choose to do random rolls and see how that affects your character, or you can also just choose what you would prefer, because these have both a story effect. So like if you are named after somebody who glorious sacrifice, or named after somebody who's a ruthless victor, but it also has mechanical benefits or disadvantages as well. It can modify your glory or your honor, and it can give you skill, or it can give you techniques. So what Scott did was he rolled randomly,
Okay.
knowing that he could change it if he didn't like the answer.
Right.
Do you want to try this?
If we think it would work for a synth naming structure.
Well, I think that the interesting thing for me would be, why don't we try randomly rolling, and just as an exercise, see how that might fit in with your character. And if you get excited about it, fantastic. But if you also roll it and you're like, sucks, okay, we just don't have to worry about it at that point. So we're going to need a D10.
Good one.
I like how, for certain people, you're always within arm's reach of a D10.
Literally, I could source 3 right now.
Why don't you give that puppy a roll?
That's a 4.
So this would be a dynasty builder. One of your ancestors was instrumental in the rise of a powerful lord, using cunning stratagems and shrewd advice to secure their ascension. You've heard the story many times and know the importance of power subtly wielded. Kung Fu Fenris has mentioned things like a legendary person that your model is named for.
Yeah, that kind of tracks.
Which is interesting. So in this case, your glory would be decreased by 3.
Okay.
And then roll another d10.
8.
You would gain 1 rank in games.
In courtesy, wouldn't I?
In under
Oh no, wait.
4.
Oh no, sorry. They're
Yeah.
Oh, I'm not interested in games.
Yep. I don't think so.
Can I roll again?
I'm not interested in games. So the other ranks that you could potentially gain under Dynasty Builder are Command, Courtesy, and Performance. Do any of those?
I would rather Courtesy. I think Courtesy tracks more.
Okay. So in this particular case, we're going to say, so -3 glory and +1.
My glory.
You got some bonus glory already. You can lose a little bit.
So.
+1 courtesy. So maybe that's kind of what you would like, right? Maybe that makes some sense. Because there are ways for you to basically gain ranks in any skill through here. But like, for instance, if you wanted to gain a rank in commerce, say, you'd have to decrease your glory by 3 and increase your honor by 3. But if you wanted to gain martial arts melee, if you wanted to gain a +1 rank in that skill, you'd have to decrease your honor by 5. So the moment we've given you +1 courtesy, but I'd encourage you at some point to just go through, see if there's any specific mechanical benefit that you want. Because the other things that you can potentially gain are an item, which at the moment you haven't even figured out an item that you want to get, which you're already supposed to get. You can also potentially get the Blessed Lineage advantage. Or you can change one of your rings by increasing one of them by 1 and decreasing one by 1. So basically shift a ring total. So these are various things that you can choose. At the moment, we've got that +1 courtesy. But if you decide to change it later, honestly, go for it. Because I don't give a fuck.
I want to change. Okay, great. Made a note. Aha.
Because I don't give a fuck. Now.
Oh, shit.
For number 19, what is your character's personal name? Have you named your character?
No.
Most people have not.
Good, because a lot of it is going to be, again, like our world building that we're doing.
That's right. Do we
when
want
I
to have
know
a
what
name?
type of language we're using, I'm gonna incorporate that.
Yeah,
into
you kind of don't want to name your
character's
character Fuckstick if
if there are no fucksticks in this world,
Yeah, but what if Fuckstick is basically like the equivalent of our Smith or Nguyen?
Exactly.
Right? In that case, we've kind of reached the last question, and this is a question which I'll remind people what's going on with it. The question, very simply, is how should your character die? Now, I have asked the other players to think of this, but I do not want you to reveal this, either to chat or to the other players. We're going to talk about it. In session 0, you're going to write down your answer to this question, and I will seal it in an envelope. When the campaign is over, we'll have a look at all the players' answers. If you ever choose to change your answer, like if midway through you're like, oh, I think this might be appropriate, then you'll write down the answer and we'll put it in the envelope alongside the original answer.
Hey. That's
So
exciting.
yeah, so I think that this game very specifically sort of has mentioned the idea that death is close. And I don't know, maybe we'll actually have our first PC death specifically, right? We haven't really had a PC death before.
It's because our characters are so good at turning back time. I should have died Scott should have died probably multiple times. I don't know if Kate ever got to that point, but
we may find that that'll happen. Either way, it also sort of gives us an idea of how we want to proceed. This game has mechanics for death. So the reason why I mention this is because, for instance, Exalted Essence, very specifically, you can't die unless you and the storyteller both agree that it's time. This game very specifically has, if you fail these particular rolls, you die. So we have to kind of decide, and we'll do that in session 0, about what we want to do about that, because I know that certain games, maybe that threat of death is important, but we also don't necessarily want to end a story too soon just because dice happen to fall in the wrong way.
Yeah.
So I am interested in having an idea of how you believe your character should die. Remember also that in this game, the concept of seppuku doesn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
But instead, your character can still choose to sacrifice themselves and like, I'll hold the bridge, you go, and you're just like standing there and there's like nukes being dropped.
Oh my God, nukes!
Right? So like that can still exist. But the idea that you can end your own life to restore honor, instead is you can pull the skull jack out of the base of your skull. In doing so, you immediately are unable to access new information. You can't interface with the cloud, and you'll lose a lot of the knowledge that you gained through that. You essentially, for you, it would be the equivalent of you going from a 2A right back down to a 1.
Okay.
And that's and you can never get back up again. So the idea is that you're not dead, but you've lost something and you can never get it back. And at
it's
that
like
point,
a factory reset almost. Like
pretty close.
Yeah.
So a stage 1 synth is programmed for a specific function and does that function well. A stage 2 synth has exceeded focus programming and has moved on to generalized programming. A stage 2A synth is a synth who has also become interested in the concept of Bushido. You're basically removing features, but it's the same for humans as well as synths, right? A human samurai can also pull that out and then no longer identify as a samurai, lose a lot of their internal teaching. And I think that it's still a tragic way to go, because there's going to be memories of, I once was great, but I can't remember everything about those times now.
Yeah.
Right?
Aww.
So still an awful way to go, but and a very drastic choice to make. But I feel like this is a little more in tune with the setting that we're doing, and also kind of skips the sort of idea very specifically of like, well, I'll just end my life, because that gets kind of messy, and not my favorite concept to live by here. Okay.
We got through some of it. Some of it I don't know yet, but I will.
That's completely fine. Kung Fu Fenris, exactly. So synths are returned to their basic mode, and humans are sent into the worker force, and they lack their access to the AI overlay. Yeah. Like a robo-lobotomy? Exactly.
Yep.
Changeling and forgetting. Yep. All of that makes a lot of sense. So the other thing that I'll remind you is that I'm going to want you to have, aside from your death, I'm going to want you to have at least one secret. The secret can be minor. It can be major. It would not be, for instance, there is a disadvantage very specifically, which is dark secret. It does not count as an anxiety. In this case, it's just something that is hidden from the audience and from the other players. However serious you want it to be is up to you. But I would like to know it, just so that it may come up in the future. But that's aside from your death.
Right. Hey.
Do you have any questions?
No, I think you've put a lot of things into focus for me, which is great. There's a lot of stuff that's looking clearer, and there's still a lot of variables, which for me, yeah.
Yep.
Once we talk more, it's all gonna come together. Yeah. And this week was also a little bonkers in terms of opportunities to read more, but I look forward to uncovering more about the system.
Well,
I'm really excited about
get through your
everyone else has
bonkers
made,
week.
Yay! Doing my best.
Speaking of, what is coming up for you in the week ahead?
Okay, today's Thursday. Tomorrow night we have Punchy. We are continuing with the Punch Effect, Mass Effect 2. And then on Saturday, we are continuing the Clue of the Whistling Bagpipes. Drew Crew, 3 p.m. on my channel. Scott is streaming at 5 on his channel. Sunday, we have Punchy Book Club. We're talking Sandman Volume 2. And then at 5, we are doing something right here on this channel.
We have some ideas. It could be a one-shot. It could be more video games. We'll see. We had a lot of fun with Duck Game and Heave Ho.
It was very fun.
It's just kind of like the perfect games for that night. Oh,
yeah.
It was great. Hey, thanks for coming on in for this.
Thank you, John. Thank you so much. I love talking to you about the games that we're about to play. Like it helps so much more than reading the PDFs for me. So I'm very appreciative.
Well, that's my job. And thanks to everybody who tuned in, or if you're watching this on VOD later on. I'm looking forward to this game now that we kind of have some ideas for each of our 3 characters. I think that there's some really cool synergies going on, some cool conflicts that can happen. I am definitely looking forward to seeing how it's all going to turn out. But you'll just have to keep tuned for that. You can always just head on to our Discord for more information. But for now, I will ask you, Liz, if there was a problem that you were having in a role-playing game, if there was a difficult situation, what would be the best, if not necessarily the easiest way to resolve that?
Use your word hole.
We'll see you next time.
Bye.